Welcome to Inside The Crease, the podcast from PowerHockey Canada, dedicated to the PowerHockey community, showcasing the sport, the players, the coaches, and the unique and inspiring stories of life with a disability that break down barriers. Now please welcome your host, Matt Vocino.
Welcome everybody to this edition of Inside The Crease, presented by PowerHockey Canada. Joining me today are Ryan and Frank Belme. How are you guys doing today?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
Good. I'm extremely excited to have you guys on. It's shaping up to be a great episode. We got some exciting questions coming up, so let's jump right into it.
All right.
Obviously, you guys have been involved in the sport for 5 years now, but how did you guys get your start in power hockey?
So this was, do you want to go ahead or you want me to go ahead?
I can go ahead if you want, sure. I mean, from my perspective, in the sort of early going, we're trying to find something for Ryan, something that was his own, something to do, something that he'd really love. And we tried a number of things, actually. We tried drums, we tried curling for those with disabilities. And it's not like he didn't mind them, but he didn't really love them. And we found out about the power chair hockey through curling. We'd kind of heard about it. And so what ended up happening was, given his age, he was just kind of lining up to be the right age to be able to join the league, combined with that was right around the time when we got our first accessible vehicle. So obviously, that's really important to be able to transport the chair. And so
absolutely,
Ryan seemed really interested in giving it a shot. And so that's kind of how we got started. And for me, I mean, the volunteering aspect came quite a bit later. And, in the early going, it was all about Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. And before we get into that, Frank, Ryan, obviously, you're a hockey fan now, but when you were growing up, before you got into the sport, was hockey something that you had a passion for? Did you, say, watch the Leafs on TV or the NHL or anything like that? I know your older brother played hockey. How did that influence you?
I think my brother had a very big influence on me. I guess as soon as he stepped on the ice and I started watching him play, I was intrigued from the moment he started, and I was always wanting to play like he was. And also after that I started watching hockey on TV, started liking the Penguins and everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess that would have been right around the time, because you're a few years younger than me, but you probably would have seen them in their heyday, I guess, late 2000s, or not late 2000s, but late 2010s, seeing them win the Stanley Cup. So I'm sure that would have been exciting.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, for sure. In 3 years and 3 cups in the last 10 years. It's impressive. It's a good team to cheer for. So obviously, since you've been playing power hockey, you've had an impressive career, number of championship scoring titles, most outstanding player, but you've also had the opportunity to play internationally, both in the U.S. as well as in Italy and Australia. When you first began playing, did you ever expect to sort of have these amazing experiences and get to travel around the world? I'm definitely jealous of that.
Yeah, I would never have expected to go to all these different places. And at the start, I didn't even know that there was these big tournaments. I thought it was just like a house league and everything. And when I heard about the opportunities, I wanted to work very hard to try and be a part of those opportunities. But I didn't think I'd be able to enjoy them so quickly in my career.
Absolutely. And have you had any memories over the years that really stand out from these international competitions?
One main thing would be getting to, I guess, bond with all the teammates and stuff. But being able to play is also an amazing thing.
For sure. I can't imagine what it feels like to get to represent your country and wear that Canadian jersey. It's impressive. It's an extreme honor.
Yeah.
Frank, turn to you for a second. When Ryan first started playing pair hockey and getting involved in pair sports, did you ever expect him to have such success and have these amazing experiences?
I gotta tell you, I've said this to a couple people before. With respect to Ryan and the accomplishments, and looking back to when he joined the league as a 13-year-old, if someone had said to me then, these are all the things that are going to happen, I would have said we would probably have about the same probability as a family of us like going to the moon. It was, like it, and part of that's because all the possibilities weren't evident. But it's not so much a lack of belief and ability or anything like that. I don't want it to sound the wrong way, but but just like when Ryan started, he was 13, and the next youngest player in the entire league was 18. That's a huge difference, right?
For sure.
So, and of course, the bulk of the players they're basically all adults, right? And so
Absolutely.
It was just hard to imagine. Like I'm going to be perfectly honest. Like I really thought like Ryan would see some moderate success in there, but I just never imagined it would go the way that it did.
No, for sure. Like you said, it's only been, I guess, 5 years, and you guys have already done so much. Ryan, so much success, so many trips. Ryan, like your dad mentioned, when you started, you were only 13. A bulk of the players, were adults. Was it an adjustment and a learning curve for you? And was it challenging being the youngest player for a while?
Yeah, I think it was very challenging. Did a little bit, but then when I started to get to know all the guys and girls in the league, it got way better because it wasn't so bad in the end. It was actually awesome.
Yeah, and it's
being against older players.
I'm glad you mentioned getting to know some of the older players. In the previous episode, we spoke to Kirk Ashman about mentorship, and I know you guys have a pretty good relationship. So how did he impact your career, and how did he help you essentially become the player that you are today?
Geez, well, having him as a mentor and also a friend has been really awesome. I think it's important to always, when you're first starting sports, to have a mentor to help you through all the good times and the hard times in the sport.
Absolutely.
It was awesome to be able to create a friendship with him, and like I never would have thought that would happen at the start, but then he was very friendly. So
absolutely. I apologize for not knowing this, but were you guys ever on the same team when you first started, or how did that friendship sort of start and blossom?
Yeah, the first 3 years I played, we were on the same team. Yeah. Sometimes sitting on the bench, we would chat a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it started.
Was there any piece of advice that really stuck with you that he gave you early on?
One thing that really stood out was like telling me not to give up and keep trying my hardest, and then things would work out.
No, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think one thing that's really important and unique about power hockey in particular is the game is so accessible. It's not really a sport like sledge hockey where you need to have certain abilities. It's open to a wide variety of people with disabilities and different limitations and capabilities. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Like, never give up just because you might not be one of the better players right away. You have the ability to sort of find your role and your niche in the game that you can be successful at. Turning it back to you, Frank, obviously now you're a coach. You've been a volunteer coach in the house league for a number of years, but why was it important for you to get involved in the sport and coach Ryan?
I think for it to be important and a rewarding aspect of it, I think is just knowing that I'm contributing to allow a number of people to sort of reap all the benefits of being a parasport athlete. Like just knowing that I'm contributing to help them be able to do that, is really important. And secondly, in this league in particular, in power hockey, like just the people are just great. I just love the people, whether it's players, coaches, volunteers, fans, those who run the organization. Like it's just a great set of people. And, I'm really grateful for the opportunity that it's brought Ryan, and I'm really happy to be able to contribute as well in my own small way. It's just an opportunity to create lifelong friendships with these people, and it's just awesome.
For sure, and you see in able-bodied sports that when parents are involved in coaching aspect in particular, there's that fine line of being a coach and being a parent. So obviously you're Ryan's coach in the house league. How do you balance that parental role and the coaching role?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that. It really, you have to start from a balance point of view. You've got to be able to compartmentalize. Like you've got to separate being a coach from being a parent. Mm-hmm. And what's one of the things that's, if I had to say one thing that's probably the most important thing, is just as a person in general, you have to start out by being able to be objective. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to assess your child in the same way you would any other player, without bias. And so it can't be too hard on your child. You can't favor them. You've got to basically treat them like any other player. And I already had some experience with this because I actually coached Ryan's older brother, Adam, when he played for a few years. And so I went through some growing pains and some experience there. And so learned some things. If I had to give some advice about it, it's kind of interesting because being able to assess whether or not you possess the objectivity that you need, you already need to kind of be objective to self-assess, right? So it's a bit of a catch-22. So I think it's a good idea to kind of consult, not just with your child, but with your family, and really sort of talk about what the situation, this types of situations that may arise, and make sure that you can work through them. And you have to make an agreement with your child. You basically have to say, look, when it's game time, that means, or practices or whatever, that means, the coach / parent treats their child as a player, mm-hmm. and the player talks to and treats their parent like a coach. And I think it's also, the last bit of advice I'd say is it's also important to kind of always assess the situation, talk to your child about it, see how it's working out, and be honest, but, both ways. And because you want the experience to be positive. At the beginning of each season, I ask Ryan the same question: are you still okay with me coaching? Because for me, as much as I love to volunteer, like for me, this is about Ryan first. And it's his thing, and I would never want to do anything to jeopardize his enjoyment of it. And so I think it's important to communicate.
No, for sure. I can relate to that a little bit. My dad, for a number of years, also coached me, and we sort of had those similar conversations at the beginning of every season, where he would say, "Matt, are you okay with me coaching again this year?" And I think as long as there's those open communications and everybody's on board, it works pretty smoothly. Ryan, how much have you enjoyed having your father on the bench the last number of years?
You can be honest, right?
Yeah, you can be honest. You can be totally honest. If you want me to start, I'll be honest. Having my dad as coach was great, but we definitely butted heads a little bit on the bench sometimes because we're both competitive, right? So if we disagreed with what each other were doing, it comes out. So yeah, like your dad said, be honest.
It's actually been really smooth. We haven't butted heads yet.
That's good.
Might come, but no, but honestly, I actually really like it. Yeah, and having my dad coach, I don't know, it just adds more excitement. It adds more energy to the bench, I would say.
That's definitely a good thing. Definitely a good thing. Turning back to you for a second, Frank. Obviously, you've been following the sport for 5 years since Ryan has been playing. But since you've been on the bench, how has your appreciation and your perspective of para sports changed now that you have a closer front row seat to Ryan and his teammates?
I think, as far as perspective goes, I think some people may watch parasports and be surprised at what the athletes are capable of, but I don't look at it quite that way, because I've actually always kind of respected and admired and been a bit intrigued by basically humans' ability to adapt and improve at things. You see what people are capable of in general when they practice and practice and practice. It could be anything, right? Like it doesn't have to be sports. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just amazing what people can achieve. And so I'm not surprised to see what the athletes are capable of. But you touched on one point that's one of the first things I always bring up about power chair hockey, and you touched on it earlier, is when you look at parasports in general, it's great that they exist, but a lot of the parasports are not entirely inclusive within the community of people with disabilities. A lot of them require upper body strength, whether you're talking about sledge hockey or wheelchair basketball or whatever the sport may be. The thing that stood out to me right from the beginning about power chair hockey is that it's so widely inclusive because anybody can play it. Anybody that can drive a chair can play that sport. So that's the first thing that, the first perspective I have on it. And then the second thing is just, it really serves as a reminder of how important the availability is of parasports and what competitive sports are about in general, about building confidence and teaching teamwork and other life skills. And it just gives that opportunity, like Ryan mentioned earlier, to form just great friendships. And I'll tell you, from a front row seat as a parent watching, and then as a coach, this changed Ryan's life. There's no two ways about it. Like, Ryan was
amazing,
very, very shy, and he just the spark of success that started from the beginning just changed the way he looked at everything. He suddenly, his confidence grew enormously. He became a better student. He wanted to be, he was competitive. He wanted to be a better student, and wanted to be better at whatever he was doing. And so it really had a huge impact. And I'll tell you, I'll just give you this one little anecdote. One of the things early on that really, really stood out for me, it's kind of hard to explain it, but I'll never forget at the beginning of the first season, Ryan had a really, good season for his first season as a 13-year-old. And I can't stress how shy he was at the time. Right. And when they announced the tryouts for the team that was going to go to the North American Championships, Ryan took a form and he basically went right up himself, and he was determined to try out. And that, for me, that was a big thing. That was a big step out for him at the time. And so that really showed to me how much, he really loved it.
Ryan, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Kirk and your relationship, and your dad sort of mentioned it, like you become more successful, more outgoing, which is obvious and evident from as long as I've known you. But do you think, aside from just excelling at the sport, do you think seeing other adults that were disabled, that were like us, be successful in the world sort of helped you and shaped you outside of playing the game of hockey?
I think it's impacted me a little bit. I think it's definitely given me more confidence that I can do more things other than just be able to play hockey. And
for sure, I think that's, at the end of the day, extremely important, kind of like what your dad mentioned and what you reiterated. Playing power sports and para sports in general isn't just about the sport and the activity. It's about the life lessons that you can learn along the way. Obviously, now you're a seasoned player. You've been in the sport for a number of years, but not too long ago, you were a younger player. So, assuming we get up and running in the next year, hopefully, and the COVID situation is under control, I'm assuming there's going to be some younger players starting out. So what piece of advice would you give them?
I'd say come in with an open mind, and I guess give it a couple tries if you don't like it the first time. And most important, like Kirk told me, never give up and always achieve greater than a goal you set.
For sure. Honestly, guys, I really appreciate you talking to me. But before I let you go, we here at Inside the Crease, we like to dig a little bit deeper than just talking about parasports and disability. So I know you two guys are big techies. How did you get into that as a hobby, and how does that sort of creep into other areas of your life? Ryan or Frank, take it away.
I'll let you go first because I have something to say after that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Well, just from a tech standpoint in general, I started pretty young. Actually, I got my first computer when I was 13, and I just took to it like for whatever reason. It wasn't just playing games by any means. It was like teaching myself, programming. And ultimately, I went to university and graduated with a computer engineering degree from Waterloo. And I'm a software architect / developer. And so that, from a technical standpoint, that's certainly my foray, basically in front of a computer quite a bit. So
yeah. How about you, Ryan?
Well, I got into this because of my dad. I've always liked techie stuff, just because of him. Watching him do some stuff. I liked being creative because my brother was also really good at art and stuff. So I wanted to do that on the computer end.
I've seen some of the stuff you guys have been working on from an artistic standpoint the last couple months and couple years that I've known you. For the both of you, any big ideas or projects on the go right now that we should keep an eye open for?
Well, I mean, from my standpoint, Ryan mentioned the whole creativity thing, and that I like to draw ever since, like, I started pretty young, like probably like 8, as an 8-year-old or something. I started to draw a fair bit. And then that kind of started to cross section with technology. And before our older son was born, I got to try a tablet. This is back in the day, so this is not an iPad. This is like a Wacom tablet that you can basically draw on, and you get the results on the screen, right? And so I really enjoyed that, and so that transitioned into me doing basically digital paintings. Like every year I would do a painting for each child's birthday, each of Adam and Ryan's birthdays, and I'd have them printed at a high quality and framed, and I'd give them to them for their birthday. And then basically they're still, those pictures are still hanging on their walls today.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and lastly, like things kind of transitioned. That was my sort of first crossover away from just sort of traditional drawing and art. But I really like to just create things and see the results. And so I went from drawing to digital paintings to doing some 3D design work for the purpose of 3D printing. I like to spend a long time carving fancy pumpkins, making decorative cakes. I've started basically recently doing pyrography, which is wood burning, and then even designed the logos for the house league jerseys. And so I like to just be creative, and see the results of what I make.
Before I let you guys go, we have a little fun segment that we like to do inside the Crease. It's called the 6-shot shootout.
Now it's time for the 6-shot shootout. It's 6 rapid-fire questions coming at you, so get ready.
So I'm going to hit you guys with 6 questions, and it's like this or that. So I'll say the question, and you guys can both answer. You guys ready?
Yep.
Sure.
All right, don't worry. They're nothing too stressful. First question for both of you. Are you guys morning or night people? Ryan, you start.
Night.
How about you, Frank?
Definitely night.
Really both. I go to bed late, get up early. I used to be a night person. Now I'm kind of a bit of both, really.
Burning the candle at both ends. I like the dedication.
Yeah.
Burgers or pizza? And what's your favorite toppings?
I would do both. Yep. And I don't put many toppings on my burgers or pizza. Mainly just like cheese on my pizza, maybe a bit of pepperoni, and then just usually cheeseburger. Yeah.
I'm the same way, man. Keep it classic. Taste all the flavors of the burger and of the tomato sauce. How about you, Frank?
I would definitely have to go with pizza. I love burgers, but I think I like pizza more. As far as toppings go, like if I had to pick one, I think peppers, whether green or red or whatever. I like peppers are probably my favorite vegetable, so I'd have to go with peppers.
I like that. Me too. They're really good. Money or fame?
That is a tough one. I'm not sure.
Maybe a little bit of both. How about you, Frank?
I would definitely pick money, for not because I'm greedy, but for practical purposes. Like I think financial security definitely lowers your stress level, and also I think fame would get old after not too long, of not being able to live your life the way you want to live it,
Agreed. We can only handle too much paparazzi. Text or emails or phone calls? Would you rather text or have a phone call?
Text, I'd say.
I'm the same way, buddy. How about you, Frank?
I think it depends whether I think you'd have to sort of divide it into personal or professional. So professional, it's definitely going to be email more often, although instant messaging is definitely sort of becoming a way of communication, with the whole COVID thing and everybody working from home. And then from a personal standpoint, so I'd lean toward email for professional, and from a personal standpoint, it would definitely be text.
Summer or winter?
I would gotta say summer. I like the warm weather. I don't like getting stuck in the snow with the tires and everything.
I can totally relate to that. I don't think anybody in a wheelchair likes winter. Frank?
Oh, it's easy. Summer. Yeah, easy choice. Yeah, count the days during winter, waiting for the nice weather to come. So
I know, me too. Luckily, we haven't had, I guess, too much snow this year, although the last week hasn't been that kind to us. Last question, rock or pop music?
I would say rock.
Good choice. Do you have a favorite band?
I'm not really a fan of the newer pop music.
I hear that. How about you, Frank?
Easy rock. I just can't tolerate the pop music at all. I just want to plug my ears. So yeah, it's definitely rock.
Okay, final question for you both. Where do you see the future of power hockey in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I would definitely hope that we can get the sport of power hockey into the Paralympics. That would be the big goal, but...
For sure. That's a dream.
Yeah, that's a dream.
No, it's true. I think we're on the right track with more international tournaments in the last couple of years. I think it's definitely a possibility. How about you, Frank? What do you hope for the sport in the next few years?
Yeah, I think on the sort of more realistic side, you have to look at domestic growth of the game first, and I think I really think it's feasible for some big strides to be made there. As far as the international level goes, like I definitely agree with Ryan. Like that's a goal that should definitely be held in high regard and focused on. It was a real eye opener to go to those World Championships in Italy and see how well developed and funded the programs are in different parts of the world.
Very last question, I apologize, but obviously, in order for parasports to grow, having volunteers is extremely important. So what would you say to potential listeners and viewers of this podcast? How would you sort of encourage people to get involved and volunteer with the sport?
In terms of encourage them, I would just say, I just touch back on some of the points I mentioned before. There's just a great community of people there, and it can be highly rewarding to just contribute to the whole ecosystem. There are lots of ways to contribute, whether it be, whether you've got life experiences that can help grow the sport, or whether you're a former coach and you might want to, try your hand at a slightly modified game. Whatever the case may be, there's lots of opportunity to chip in, and again, it's just the people are just great. I can't say that enough, and so it's just highly rewarding.
You know what? I think that's the perfect way to end it, guys. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
No trouble. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you for joining us on Inside the Crease, the podcast dedicated to the power hockey community. If you enjoyed today's show, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend. Visit our website at InsideTheCrease.com and follow us on social media at Inside Crease.